You're now tuned into the hottest podcast in the world, the Stay Woke Podcast, right here on TheSonicBreakdown.com.
Man, it's time to wake up.
Welcome back to another Stay Woke Podcast. This is DeRa Brinson, and you know the Stay Woke Podcast is presented by TheSonicBreakdown.com. And today we're going to have another special episode. Avengers Infinity Wars just came out, so you know we had to do it. We had to do our review. And for this podcast, we're going to have Benjamin Ananawo, who did the Black Panther, the Wakanda Report series. He's going to be hosting this. And we have a guest for this podcast as well. We got Reddy in the building, as always, for the comic book series, even though he missed out on the Black Panther because he was slacking. But it's all good. And we have Miss Alanna Jane here again for another episode. She's been constant, unlike Mr. Reddy over here, who was she was here for the Black Panther.
Like this shade everywhere, my bad.
Well, my name is Benjamin Ananawo. You can follow me on Instagram at Cousin Benji. So let's go ahead and get right into it. This is the Infinity War. This is Marvel MCU's big payoff for at least the first half of what they are trying to do in their cinematic universe. We've had phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. They're getting ready to move into phase 4, and it's the beginning of the end with the Infinity Wars. We get all of the great characters back. We get Captain America, we get Iron Man. We merge them with characters that have moved on, like Doctor Strange. We add in all of these great characters. Wakanda appears again. It's really an amazing cast of characters put together in this mashup of everybody's pugilistic friends that happen to be the Avengers and the villains that they are trying to defeat, which the villain is Thanos. Before we go ahead and get into the 3 different acts of the way that the movie follows.
Real quick, sorry, brief insertion. Spoilers.
Yes, spoilers. Yes.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
At this point, if you have not watched the movie yet, you should not listen to this. You need to go ahead and watch the film. Preferably go ahead and watch it on a Tuesday. It's usually $5 at AMC.
Stop now. You've been warned. All right, Ben, my bad. Go ahead.
All right, so Reddy, tell us about the introduction of the character.
Yeah, so when we actually think about the characters in this universe, each one of these characters always have an iconic feels, right? When you look at Captain America, he was always this good old boy. But in this one, you got to see the more different version, the more we can call grimy version, the one that came out of the shadows. He still had the iconic, I'm a badass and you still can't mess with me, but he still had that, I'm a little bit on the other side, which we saw that that was present throughout his actual movie. And then if we go from there, when he came in, you also see his team as the other side that still somehow was able to survive despite what happened with the Accords. And each one of them showed, like, when you had Natasha come in, she came in with that quick assassination, kill, flip you, and fuck people up. Falcon comes in with a little swift sidekick. I'm giving you a little extra assistance because he always gets downgraded as to like a side. Let's be real, even in his fighting techniques.
I think that we see also the time lapse.
Yeah.
So this is 3 years. They mention it in the film when those characters appear. So basically Cap's new secret Avengers of sorts. It's 3 years since the cords have been placed after what happened with Civil War. That's taking place now pretty much actually 3 years after the end of that post-credit scene where Bucky gets put on ice inside of Wakanda.
Correct. Right. But we did see Bucky again in Black Panther that he was working as a White Wolf, which brings me to his introduction into the movie, which, kind of fast-tracked at that one point when he came in, it was instantly the White Wolf needs to get ready, go to business.
Right.
And that was always who he was. Even though when he's no longer
he's a murderer.
He's a murderer. When Wars comes around, he's that person. And then when we saw the introduction of what I would consider one of the baddest asses motherfuckers of the universe, you still saw who he was.
You're talking about Thanos?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, just real quick about Bucky though, like you also got to see that he's healed of being the Winter Soldier. Like presumably, Shuri really helped him out with her advanced medical healing.
Amazing.
Yeah, because it's like he says he feels so much better. Like at the end of
and the
Black Panther.
vibranium arm was freaking beautiful.
It was
so beautiful.
I mean, who wouldn't want to take a vacation in Wakanda? I think that'd heal anybody.
Right? Just get inside that dome, right?
It's beautiful.
There is a hard, cold open. They are not messing around. Immediately, this takes place right after Thor Ragnarok, where all of the Asgardians that are left are on the ship. Shout outs to basically them kind of doing an homage to Beta Ray Bill, if you're familiar with the comics, or if you've watched some of the movies, to where all of his people, the Corbinites, were on side of one ship. So you have all the Asgardians on the ship. Thor has been found by the Guardians of the Galaxy, not yet, but he shows up on the ship. Thanos is there. You already see litters of bodies all over the floor, reminiscent of the scene with Hela murdering all of the Asgardians.
But the part that I like to distinguish about this one, because even when she murdered all the alive, she still had a certain air. But this time with the Death Squad, it was more like, you should be praised that your death is for the glory of Thanatos.
And the person that basically said that, which was probably one of my favorite characters in this movie, is Ebony Maw. Which
AKA
is
Squidward.
Yes. He's evil Squidward. Comes in with just this emissary feel where he's just all like, hands together, and he's just saying, all praise Thanos for mercifully gearing balance back to the life, because that's what this whole entire movie, the whole theme, if this were supposed to be a PowerPoint presentation, it would be all about balance
and resources. And one quick thing about that, the feeling of the cold open, the energy, it just drops you immediately into an action sequence that you didn't even see the beginning of.
Yes.
And that just let me know that, like, have you done your homework, children? If you're like are you ready to receive the Infinity Wars plot? Because it made you like get right into everything.
It made you also realize
too.
I was having debates with friends where they were saying, it's going to be Marvel's highest grossing film and all those things. And in all actuality, I don't know how you all feel. I don't see it overtaking Black Panther for the cold opening alone, letting be known that I know a lot of people that are afraid to watch this movie because they haven't watched all of the previous films. And they do make it apparent with this cold opening, if you're got a spouse or a friend or somebody that shows up with you in the film, they're going to annoy the fuck out of you by asking,
who's that? 1,000 questions.
What's going on? What's happening?
They're like a continuation and anything. Like, they instantly, you have to know what was going on. If not, you're basically lost in the beginning, which was the next opening I wanted to talk about, which was Thor's opening. It was, if you saw the end of the last Thor Ragnarok, he kind of left triumphant, like, at least I saved my people and I'm gone. So he's in a place of like, let's start this new life. But the opening in this one, when you see him, was I'm already broken.
Interesting, because like that's also how he hangs out at the very beginning of Thor Ragnarok.
Exactly.
It's a parallel
of him being broken.
So it kind of shows that again. And my favorite and my saddest intro was kind of Hulk's, because Hulk had his typical, low-key went up there with his intro was him being, mischievous always, because he's always still with the Tesseract. He's always doing something behind his back. So that was his theme through his short yet quirky period in the movie.
So let's talk about that, moving through this cold open. Opening happens. Thor is basically been beaten half to death. He's on the floor. His people have been murdered. Ebony Maw is giving us this introduction of folks bowing to Thanos. We have Loki that is here. He's, as usual, trying to squirm his way out. If we all remember, Loki first got in bed with Thanos, believing that he could go ahead and take over Asgard. So now he has the Tesseract. Thanos wants the Tesseract, but they have one card left to play, and it's usually an ace in the hole that has been quite successful in prior films is, we have a Hulk. And he says, but we have a Hulk. Hulk comes out there. Thanos's Death Squadron are basically held back as he says, no, let me go ahead and get a fair one. I will take this fade one-on-one. And, I mean, he throws a vicious right cross to Hulk's, shoulder, debilitating his right arm, then proceeds to just bludgeon him with an inch of his gamma-rayed life.
But it's not even that. Like, for the first time, and any time you've seen the Hulk, you actually saw a moment of fear in his actual face. When he started fighting Hulk and he hit him in the arm, and he hit him so hard that, it rocked the Hulk. You can see the Hulk's facial expression change from his typical rage to like, oh, shit. And then from that point on, it made the precedent of the Hulk through the whole movie, because he got such an ass whooping he'd never experienced, which was so amazing for the Hulk, he never wanted to come out again.
Yeah, he had transition dysfunction.
And one of the things I think I love that one part was an homage to the comic books, because if you know one thing about the comic books, in one of the futures where Thanos gets Infinity Gauntlet and takes over the universe, he makes Hulk his bitch. he puts Hulk in poking chains and basically uses him as his, footstool, his little lapdog, and Hulk was that bitch mode. And because he couldn't be stopped. And you saw that in it. And so I love that kind of shout out to y'all know what it is.
Thanos then he picks up Thor right in front of his brother Loki. We once again are introduced to the theme that exists between their brotherhood. We're really half brothers. They don't care about you. But as he's squeezing the head of Thor as if it's getting ready to bust like a grape, eventually Loki pulls out the Tesseract. They've been defeated now. Thanos has it. It's looking like all hope is lost.
So wait. I want to correct something. He wasn't squeezing his head. If you were looking closely, he was actually using the Power Stone, on the top of his forehead to kind of destroy parts of his head. Yeah. So that's was an introduction to one of the first stones, because it was directly on there, just embedding it into him, which was making it even worse because he knew he was giving him something just as powerful as was being used against him in that even higher field.
Exactly, and that was the introduction of the first stone, which he had that. So he's using the Power Stone. He's getting ready to go ahead and kill Thor. The Tesseract comes out. Looks like they're about to go ahead and be defeated. And then in a latch-dish effort from Heimdall, great Heimdall, which, shout out to Idris Elba. He's been an awesome actor.
His locks were looking gorgeous.
Yes, really were. He had all the special last little bits of Asgardian shea butter inside of those dreadlocks. In his last effort that he has, he's able to go ahead and use that sword to go ahead and get the Bifrost going right inside the ship. Was really cool, and be able to go ahead and send Hulk back to Earth.
So my question for y'all about that is, why do you think Heimdall, because I have an opinion, I just kind of want to see what y'all opinion was, why do you think Heimdall chose the Hulk instead of somebody that he was sworn to protect, like the Asgardian king Thor, when he knew he couldn't win?
At that moment, I think just in the direction of where Thor was, it would have been difficult, but I also think
he was locked up in that metal, I think.
Yeah, because he was locked up by Ebony Maw. And I think he was able to go ahead and to use the Hulk because the Hulk is of Earth. Even though
he can use him as a beacon.
He used him as a beacon. He is of Earth, and the Hulk has not been back at all.
A warning sign.
So the Hulk coming back, being able to go ahead and see Bruce Banner, that basically ends the cold open, and then we move into the first act of the movie.
Which is another awesome introduction, which is one of my favorite introductions of Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's just an awesome
cosign.
Yeah, you just see the Hulk flying through Earth and to the Bifrost, and then he crashes into Doctor Strange's house, and it's just him and Wong looking at him like, "What is this?"
Which is amazing because also
arguing about sandwiches.
And it was amazing too because Strange has not been introduced to the Avengers yet. He is not an Avenger.
He doesn't know any of these motherfuckers.
He doesn't know anything. He knows Thor.
He saw Loki.
Because he was in Thor Ragnarok, but he does not know who Bruce Banner is. Yep. He has not met Tony Stark. He obviously knows who Tony Stark is because he's rich and famous. He's rich and famous. But he's dealing being the Sorcerer Supreme, so he's not really keeping up with what's going on in New York City or the version of New York City that is in this
think
universe.
About it, even when him and Tony actually had some conversations at that first time, and he was like, "What have you been doing?" He was like, "I've been saving this reality." So yeah, it kind of reinforces that way. He's just like, I'm not worried about really just city. You can fuck with this city. I have to worry about the whole reality as a whole.
And also too, I think this answers the question that you had. Think about where Heimdall sent him. Heimdall knows about who the Sorcerer Supreme is. He could see all. So if there's one person that's going to believe what happens, and more importantly has the power, he sent him to somebody that had a soul stone.
Yeah, had no history. Yeah,
he had the history and sent him to the one soul stone that can reverse everything. The person has the Eye of Armageddon, which happens to go ahead and be that. I know,
R.I.P. dude.
Yeah.
Shit, had Heimdall been, in charge, had Asgard decided to go ahead and elect a black president, you never know what may have happened,
I heard Idris Elba wanted to get out though. He was probably over the contact lenses, to be honest.
Yeah,
that was rough.
Yeah,
it's time for him to go ahead and be put in some new version of James Bond since they don't want to put him in the actual James Bond. So there's other things for him to do.
Also, with their Phase 4, one thing they've said since basically Phase 2 is they want to have a major shift because they don't want to be like the comic books where they keep the same characters for 30 years. Most of them have said they love the fact that Hugh Jackman, for example, Wolverine, was Wolverine for so long.
Like 15 years, yeah.
Yeah, about 15 years across 7 to 8 movies, but most people no longer want that because they want the evolution, which is why I am kind of glad they are moving with this phase 4 with them making people different, making things different, making however they're going to do it. It's a new change to the universe. So it feels actually new and it gets new people. Because when it's always just Captain America, where he's awesome, but it's kind of like, yo, we've been seeing him for 50 years. This nigga got to die eventually.
And speaking of death, from that scene, Heimdall does die, and so does Loki.
Yes.
And it's looking like Loki's gone
For good.
At least for the foreseeable, probably future.
Because one permanent thing they did that they'd never done before is when he died this time, he went back blue. If y'all noticed that, he never
saw.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was cool that happened. Then we got a scene
from all the way back to Thor 1.
Yeah, and then we got a scene which I really wasn't feeling because I'll just be honest, I am pretty tired of Tony Stark's shit. I'm over it. The only redeemable quality of Tony Stark is the fact that Robert Downey Jr. plays him, but it's all too easy for Robbie Downey Jr. because the character is a lush that happens to be a multi-millionaire. So,
billionaire.
You know.
Not a reach, you're saying?
Yeah, so it's not really a reach. I mean, I feel like he just, gets the chance to kind of play himself.
Oh, yeah. Like, quick critique sitting over here being the lady in the room. I was super mad that the only reason we see Pepper is so she can step into a nagging harpy trope. Straight trope. It was the laziest thing ever. Why bother?
But see,
I was mad.
Those two intros was iconic to everything they've ever been through. So when we finally see him again, he's basically still has the crest on his chest, like it wasn't removed in the last movie, which she made homage to that, which is again that that Marvel long-term thought process, as well as we haven't seen her for several movies. Right. And then she comes back in as only the side character of I want you to come back.
Come home.
So it was almost that it kind of made you feel like he should die because of what happened, even if you don't know what the comic books talk about.
There's alien spaceships in the air, and she just saw like, Tony, if you don't get back here right now, and it's all
that's
like,
what made me
really,
super
Pepper?
angry.
Super annoying. And then you never hear from her again.
Right, and they also dropped that arc completely.
Well,
ooh, looking at you, writers. Anyway,
yeah. Well, I'm wondering too. I'm just all like, did Pepper make it? But we'll talk about that at the end of this. Yeah. So we really don't know. All of a sudden, boom! Similar to I think the movie Oblivion, or also kind of homage to the movie. Good. That is the prequels to the Alien movies that has the engineers. What's the name of that movie again?
The engineers.
I don't know.
The Aliens movies.
Prometheus,
yeah. So the ships kind of have that feel, a circular round to them and stuff, and they're going,
but those
in the sky,
are the
very
recall
thin.
ships. If you notice, like the big ships all kind of have like the Death Star kind of vibe.
They did look just like Death Stars.
But then all the recall, which are with like the individual, the Death Squad's individual vehicles, were were interesting, which was one of my favorite intros. If we can go there, is Spider-Man.
Yes.
It's and one thing I was talking to several people before is you knew it was Spider-Man the minute you saw hair raise, because it's that iconic who he was, and I love how they introed him because he is a kid.
Yeah,
and they introduced him.
Spidey sense.
His Spidey sense, yeah. They introduced him as a kid because he is a kid, and he's in a bus
literally
with kids.
on a school bus.
And
he's going on to whatever. And I love his Polynesian friend. Once again, he's just like, hey, dude, hit me with a distraction.
Oh my God, we're gonna die.
We're all gonna die. Gets, puts on his mask and stuff because as we remember, Tony took his suit back from him. So he's now back out here slumming with whatever he was able to sew.
If you remember at the end of Spider-Man, he got his the beginning electronico suit. So remember the one that has stealth mode and he had that because even when he was going out in space and you saw him attached, that wasn't his rinky-dink original one. It was the original one Tony made for him right before he sent the Iron Spider for him.
Okay. Yeah, he went ahead and he put on the mask. Gets to going, ends up on side of a ship, even though Tony wanted him to go ahead and just as usual, help out, but don't get hurt, kid. Because there's still that level of guilt that Stark has with what has led to the whole entire accords that happened after Sokovia.
But you also noticed he never made, and in every movie they've made a point of it, that he never made Spider-Man sign the accords. because he still wanted Spider-Man to be off grid. And I think part of the reason that they said multiple times, like, is he a mentor to him? But he kind of is, but he isn't, because both of them are genius. Most people forget that Spider-Man himself is not just a smart kid. He is a genius. Yeah. If you can develop...
Although they really haven't developed that much. Maybe they're going to do it in the next movie, but they've pretty much just made him as like
a regular
I'm confused kid. Yeah,
but
like,
you got to also think about
he
it.
Doesn't have the what is it? Tobey Maguire used to play the original. Where it's like it was clear, like okay, he had a science like type of degree. They made mention to it.
But you think about it like this: he's quirky, right? Like Spider-Man's supposed to be. But think about it: when we see him in his Spider-Man movie, when he made the webs, he clearly made something that was beyond any kind of technology, as well as he was able to hack into his original iron suit from Tony. You have to be at another level to be able to even think of something like this. This is the man that created an Iron Man suit.
But with that, they made it in the scene, the way that it was shot, they made it seem that it was more of his friend
partners,
that was programming or reprogramming the suit than he was. He was more of the hardware engineer, and the friend was more of the programming engineer or the computer engineer.
So they've kind of toned down his level of
intelligence.
That's what I mean. Where before it was him doing both.
Yeah,
it would have been him doing both of it, pre-programming and doing the hardware.
Right, because he never had that in the comic books. A real friend that he can be with. All his friends became enemies. But the one part I do love very, very much is we got to see the Iron Spider suit. And for y'all that don't know, the Iron Spider suit was the suit he put in. He showed at the end of his last movie, and then actually he was wearing. It's very iconic because it always has the 3 legs in the back that assist.
Right.
Yeah, it's almost like a extra spider kind of sense. Mm-hmm. To be honest, the legs almost work to the same exact degree that the cape that Doctor Strange has.
Oh, yes. Good comparison.
So,
and I love that they even show that the cape at multiple times throughout this movie was almost a sentient being.
Definitely.
It was chilling with them at one point in the movie, just like, yo, he's over there. I'm just, hey, like, what are we gonna do? And it was listening, and as you can see, it can hear and it understands, but it's indestructible. People don't remember that or realize that, because if you think about it, in every part of the movie, when it did something and it grabbed something or was blocking something, it never tore.
Or Drax tried to kill it.
Yeah. Wait, didn't it tear when Thanos pulled it off?
It did not tear. It just moved. It just got off. Because it's indestructible.
It looked like it got damaged pretty badly.
I remember hearing an audible tear when he pulled it. I don't know about seeing it.
I would have to check that because it's supposed to be indestructible.
I would love to go ahead and get like a side, 15-minute, 30-minute film about the cape's origin. Like, I don't know if there's like a person's mind that's in the cape.
Are you listening,
maybe the
Pixar?
original person in
Do
the
that
cape.
shit.
Oh yeah, Pixar. Like maybe the original person that's in the cape is like in the Soul Stone. I don't know, but like the cape is very, very interesting.
Oh, what if the giant dwarf dude made it? He makes stuff. I mean, he's a forger.
Maybe his sister made it.
Nice.
So since we would keep with the gender norms that they happen to be going with here with how they treated Pepper.
Follow Cousin Benji on Instagram. Hollywood
itself
Serious.
it has a sentientness, but it's just advanced magic. It's considered some ancient magic, which makes it have the ability to consistently float and have a sentient origin, but not free thought. Once it picks as a master for it being a relic, it stays with that particular person, as we saw when Doctor Strange first got it. Yeah. And now it's only his. As you see, it's never tried to save anybody else but him.
So that taps it into the trope of like the magic carpet.
Yeah.
They also respond to that.
With that battle, Doctor Strange, who we're talking about in his cape, unfortunately, he met his match against Ebony Maw, who seems to also have a level of magic and stuff and able to tap into, and it was a good battle inside of the confines of the streets of New York City.
But the power real quick, the powers that Ebony Maw reminded me of most actually were Hela from Ragnarok. It reminded me most of Hela, which was interesting.
A lot of telekinetic, but he wasn't a real big fighter, but a real telekinetic concept.
Oh yeah, because when he got scratched by whatever that was, the debris that cut him, he was pretty damn pissed because it had probably been eons since he had been touched by somebody. It was almost like, one of these few fights where like Floyd Mayweather got hit with something clean. Yeah. I think in the Shane Mosley fight, he took an amazing shot in the second round, was the closest that we've seen Mayweather to possibly been stopped. And then from rounds 3 through 12, he put an absolute beating on Shane Mosley, and that's what happened.
It was a fascinating mashup too of the CGI mocap stuff, and also like the way they used the character was like he reminded me of a boss in a video game, like just the way
he reminded me actually of the boss from one of my favorite video games of all time as a kid, back with the good old PlayStation 1 when you press the power button and it said Sony or whatever it was. And, had that little, and it reminded me of Metal Gear Solid, where the ultimate video game boss of all time, Psycho Mantis, where you had to put the controller from controller 1 into controller 2 because the character would read your mind. If you play, like, I remember playing and I was trying to defeat him, and then all of a sudden you're just all like, how can you defeat me when your free throw percentage is at 80% in NBA Live? And I'm like, how does he know this? And I'm like, the game was so cool. So it's like he reminded me of that character with his ability to be able to use kinetic attacks.
For me, like, the thing I loved about him is he was showing his superiority through the whole fight. Where even it was him, Spider-Man was helping, Iron Man helped a little bit of time before he went on with the other guy, but he was showing like I was always in control. Like, yeah, you got this cool little magic, you have mystic arts, and he was so sarcastic with it, like, oh, he basically like, you think you're hot shit because you can do magic on Earth? Let me show you some real shit. Fucked him up against the wall, try to take it, and he was when he tried to take the amulet, he was like, oh, so you think just because I can't take it off you right now, I won't get it?
Yeah.
You're funny. Come with me real quick.
And that's the whole reason why they went there, was to go ahead and try to pick up the time stone.
Also, just real quick, the arrogance of being like, I can't even bother to do my best spells. Like, what, like, he's like so slow to take it on. I don't know. There's something about it. He's just looking down his not nose the whole time.
But my favorite part right here was when they first, the beginning of the fight, before the fight even started, when they land and they're coming up, Doctor Strange rewinds time, and then they come down and it's like, oh yeah, we about to get in this fight. All right, Bruce, go get the Hulk. He's sitting there, you can see him struggling, like a little bit of green, and you can literally see him struggling to try to be the Hulk. And then the most iconic scene from the Hulk in this movie was when he was about to, what's wrong with you? No!
Yeah, and so they're now on the ship, and then we cut and we start going into the scenes to where now we need to figure out what's going on with Thor. And he ends up getting picked up by the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Which is, I love the intro so much, is because before we even saw the ship or even the people inside, that had that old school music playing that you always know is the Guardians.
Yeah, which I can't remember which song was playing because I was jamming out definitely on there. But it was definitely some old school 70s soul that was going on. The music's happening. We go ahead and we get some great humor from Drax.
Yes.
As typical with just his like level of like aloofness that exists within inside of his race of people.
Shout out to David Bautista. It's a thankless role, but he's
David Bautista. I mean, I was watching him as a kid from the WWE days, so it's awesome to see him turn into a great actor. I mean,
him and The Rock.
I
would watch that buddy comedy. Like,
yeah, I would love to see something with him and The Rock.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Royalties, please, 0.5%.
Yeah.
We all thought of that idea.
So Groot is one of my favorite parts.
And 1 second, real quick, that song, it is the Rubber Band Man.
Oh yeah, the Rubber Band Band by the Spinners.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. The Rubber Band Man by the Spinners. And you've got Groot back there playing an old school game, and Groot is now a teenager.
And it's awesome.
And one of the best jokes to me at all when they're talking to him about get off of the game. Rocket Raccoon's talking to him because he's basically a surrogate father.
Yeah.
And he's just all like, I am Groot. And like any parent or any person that has been a teen knows that moment in time where it's just like basically he's just like fuck all to you and everything.
And they're all like, language.
One of my favorite lines, I believe it was Star-Lord, was like, you got some acorns on you. And then what was it? A Rock Raccoon, he said a good one. He's like, ever since you got a little bit of wood, you've been such a douche. And you can see that's just that teenager. And throughout the whole movie, he's kind of like that. He's just like, I'm in my own world. I really don't want to be here.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, now that he's going through the whole teen thing, he doesn't have a chance. There's nobody else from his race he gets to play with. Everyone else that's a part of the crew are older. So he's like the one teen that's out here, and he's just like, okay, we're saving the world. I think what's cool about it is, again, we're saving the universe again.
It really is again, because he said that when he was like, I am Groot one time. It's like, again, bro, for real though?
Yeah. So he's just basically, and it's kind of sad in a way, where it's just like, because they've had to save the universe over and over and over again, and with him just being the teen that's there, he doesn't get a chance to actually have a life. His life is basically saving the universe.
Yeah, because if we look at the last Guardians of the Galaxy 2, he was basically like 2 years old. So you gotta really think, like, he spent his birth from a twig in a plant all the way up to teenage years, every day, all the time, saving the world. And he's just like, fuck, bro, I just want to play my game. I've been there because that was me. I used to have the old school Game Gear, that big ass black thing in the back of the car, just like, I just want to play my games.
Correction, not saving the world, saving planets.
Oh, in the universe, my bad. The universe.
Thor is pulled in. And he's on the examination table. He's looking worse for wear. Yeah. And one of the funnier lines where Drax, him and Quill are going back and forth, and he's just all like, no. That right there is a man. Yeah.
Because he's like, Quill, you're a dude. And that right there is a man. It's like, what do we say? It's like an angel and a oh my god, it was something funny.
An angel and a warrior had a baby.
An angel and a warrior had a baby and made him, and then he's like, I'm muscular. No, you're one burger away from being fat. And then they ask Drax. Drax is like, yeah, you're actually fat. Go to Gamora, and she just kind of walks away like I ain't saying shit.
And everything.
And he says,
works
I take
out.
it serious. I'm gonna get a bow flash.
yeah. This time I'm really gonna do it. that kind of humor of that group.
Yeah,
I do want to mention one thing too, as well as that scene of the ship going into the wreckage of what Thanos did, and just showing the massive power that he had with the gauntlet, and as well as on the flip side
with
the
one
massive.
stone.
No, 2 stones at
Because
that point.
he only used 1 stone to blow that up. That was just a power stone.
But he still had 2 stones.
Yeah.
But because I believe that the more stones you have, they magnify the stone that you don't.
The gauntlet itself enhances each one of them to make them link to each other. Yeah. That's why you wouldn't have all 6. You can do whatever.
But it also showed the power or the resiliency that Thor has.
Yes.
Because the ship was completely destroyed, and he still survived. And he's in space, no oxygen.
But he's a demigod.
Gold.
Yes.
I know
he's not fully a god.
He's a god now.
Fully a god.
Yeah. But all of that, but still, for him to be that resilient, I thought was interesting.
I ain't gonna lie, that was almost an homage to me to Star Wars when when Leia was out there in space, and then she just floats back. It was just a
now,
Thor
had his
version.
hammer been there, his hammer may have floated him back to wherever he needed to go.
I can't wait till we get there because
He
one homage.
doesn't have his hammer though. No,
he doesn't have his hammer at this point, and the homage to the last Thor, Hela destroyed it. Even though Odin explained to him like, your hammer is it's a part of you, but it's not the full aspect of your power. Like, this has just helped you refine your power, but it's not your power. And we still saw that because he was still able to fight, but he just wasn't on Thanos' level.
Yeah. I think it was perfect that Thor was found by the Guardians, because there wasn't the typical exposition that needed to happen to where it's like, okay, there's this huge monster, there's this wreckage, I need to explain to you. They see fucked up things in the universe every day, so they immediately are like, okay, you're Asgardian, this is what's going on, we need to figure out what's going to happen, and it moves the story along quickly. So it's great the way that the writers were able to merge everything together by having certain groups melt with other groups, because then it made the story believable that all these things could happen at a rushed pace.
I love that Thor could speak Groot language. Like,
he said he was taught to him in grade school.
Yeah, so and instantly when he came in, he saw the difference in dynamic. He never saw Quill as a leader. He instantly saw the rabbit.
I know, right?
The
the rabbit as the leader, and had him and Groot go to, which was one of my iconic, thought processes of where his hammer was created, that everyone else was like, yo, this place don't exist. He's like, oh no, I know it does.
It does.
Yeah, it
Trust
does.
me,
Inside of a dying star. Mm-hmm. So then they're off to go ahead and find his hammer. Thor leaves with Rocket Raccoon and Groot. And then the rest of the group are on their way to go ahead and get to Benicio del Toro, the Collector, because an Infinity Stone was left there at nowhere. And they are trying to go ahead and beat Thanos because Gamora has the inside track because she is the daughter of Thanos. That's where we kind of leave that scene at.
One part that I kind of loved there that showed the building of their relationship was you got to see how Gamora was starting to unleash her past traumas upon Quill, where she's the baddest chick in the universe, and she's like unloading, like, yo, this was my childhood. I know some stuff, and just I'm having a hard time. And again, iconic, going back to Drax just standing there, the awkward. You can't see me. You don't know if I stay real still. You don't know.
I mean, the comedic genius of whoever's writing most of Drax's material is just
awesome.
like absolutely awesome.
I believe I'm invisible.
Yeah. Oh man. In fact, that's what's funny is I saw that on, I think, a World Star Hip Hop or something, where a guy's cheating on his girlfriend. She comes in and he just claims that she's all like, no, she's a replica. She's a one of these sex dolls. She's not real. And the girl's trying to pretend to move around as if she's a sex doll. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that reminded me of that.
Did they start the flashbacks on Gamora at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to talk about that, because that was what defined who she was and her trauma. Like, you took her from her mom that you just killed, gave her a weapon, and then if you really were paying attention to the background, it was the beginning of showing their concept of Thanatos' altruality, where he said, you're either with me or you're against me. If you're with me, you'll live and you'll be fine, or if not, you'll be destroyed. And he showed it quickly as he's teaching her how to balance his weapon, that you can clearly see throughout the movie was like a doll, that kind of concept. He annihilated half of a planet just because it had too many people in his mind.
It reminded me a little bit of Game of Thrones in the first season when someone turns Arya's head away from her father's decapitation. Yep. But it was like this sort of the same tense, like, he's like responsible for and also trying to deal with the trauma he's creating in this child. Like, it's like this. It's such a strange, like, sharp feeling to watch someone that is causing the pain treat someone nice around it. It's crazy. And
it's interesting too, always with that existence that happens between Gamora and her sister. But before getting to that, so just explaining to you all, so the flashback scene happens. And they're on Gamora's home planet. As Reddy had talked about, there was the mass murdering that goes on of her people. Yeah. Thanos takes her, moves her head away. As Lana's talking about, very reminiscent to Game of Thrones with Arya as she's seeing her father Ned Stark be decapitated. And you get this beautiful kind of speech as he's trying to talk about balance, and then just the object of the end that he's looking for resides within inside of the knife that is balancing upon her hand, as then we're hearing all of her people screaming and being gunned down. And then we break away from that. But what I was talking about with Gamora and her sister is, I always thought it's interesting where it's like, okay, well, Gamora's like the apple of his eye, but her sister is, experimented upon, constantly, all kinds of bad things have happened to her. And it's interesting that it's like, also you see that where it's like Gamora, she has hair. Her sister doesn't have hair. It's like all of the things that we also see that exist within inside of real life, where it's like parents can go ahead and treat one child one way in comparison to the other, with one being a tomboy, one being, deemed to be by society standards as pretty. You see that level of also chauvinism and that patriarchal power of, like, him rearing Gamora up, but to basically show her that everything that you shouldn't be, I'm going to have in this other child that I'm going to discipline.
I mean, throughout the whole movie, and I mean, through the whole time period, you just see how much you can see he actually cares for this one person, Gamora. He doesn't give a shit about Nebula. He doesn't give a shit about anything else in the universe. He does have this one connection with, he considers her a complete daughter.
I wanted to ask just the panel, what do you think about Gamora allows him to have that level of love and a level of concern and level of care that he does not have for anybody else?
It's familiarity, in my opinion. It's the typical trope that exists throughout almost all of these stories. There is some loved one that he lost on Titan that looks like Gamora. or reminds him of either his wife, his daughter, or whatever, his past life.
And her fearlessness in the moment of the attack, I think, really catches his eye, because she looks like she's like 6 years old. Well, 6 human years, whatever however they age. Like a small child, and she's very businesslike and very serious, and it's a trauma bonding for sure. Like, it's not,
because you got to also think about it, he trained her to be, because he made sure he made repetitive notions to this of everything good in you was me.
Yeah.
So if you really think about it, when he took her, he put all of his child raising concepts into gear because he saw himself in her. He made sure he said it multiple times, is, I always saw you sitting on my throne. I always saw you taking my place. I always saw you doing more.
He was always grooming you,
he was
not to be creepy,
her
but
to be his sister.
And in a way too, then that's where it's like the redeeming side to the from looking at a feministic standpoint. Of, you would think, okay, the Mad Titan, the most powerful person, as we see with, that's the difference right there between Thanos and Odin. Odin bypassed his daughter, Hela, and didn't give her the throne, and led to the ruining to Ragnarok because of his own sexism. Yep. While on the flip side, Thanos, despite like what he had done to Gamora and done to Nebula, his right hands in command were women. Yeah. So interesting take in comparison of Thanos and someone like Odin, which Odin literally, it's like you used Hela to go ahead and conquer the 9 realms, but she was never going to be good enough to be on the throne.
It's interesting in that one of the themes in the MCU is the biological fathers are trash. Yeah. The father figures to the different characters are way better. But there's a lot of father-child,
dynamics.
Yeah, a lot of family-based dynamics, especially in father stories across the MCU, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I think, to your point, I think that also adds to a level of manipulation that allows the usually evil figure to use that father figure's kind of against them.
Yeah, always, like blackmail or worse.
Exactly.
Well, after the dream in that sequence, then the two groups set off to go on their different ways. Wanda and Vision.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful intro, because to me that was another homage to the comic books, because in the comic books they were always a couple. Wanda and Vision were a couple. They even at one point in the comic books have kids that Wanda creates, but that's too hard to go through right now. But you can see their love interest he's in his human form, which is showing even more that he's becoming more than just an automaton. And I love that they made sure they made the presence of the Mind Stone there, where he was like, it hurts. Something's calling to me. I just don't understand what it is. And it was just a good intro to them, as well as you could see they were just like, hey, let's fuck everything. Let's just do us. Let's abandon, because in the scene.
And was it just me? But obviously, we kind of forget they're on opposite sides. Yeah. When she got picked up, there was an agreement basically from Cap and his Secret Avengers of him, Wanda, Maximoff, and also Falcon, where it's like, hey, you're gonna have your little rendezvous, with your man, but like we gotta get back at a certain time. Mm-hmm. So there was an issue with they're already where were you at? So when that attack happened, luckily
he also turned off his transponder so they couldn't find him, and that was only because he was with her. He never turned. And if you realize through the whole movie, he never turned it back on either. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of interesting, which we can talk about more later. But I loved when the attack came. Yeah. When the first, Death Squad came down to attack him, because they were both just about talking about running away and being together until they look at the news, and she realizes dang, it's going down in New York once again. Yeah. And then he changes his mind to nah, I can't stay, I have to go. But it was too late. And that was one of his biggest themes through the whole movie, was everything he was trying to do was always too late. And she would sacrifice anything for him until she evolved later on. So from that point on, she was like, I will give up anything for, she said it, I'll give up anything for you. And it became consistent throughout the movie. But
it was interesting because I think Elizabeth Olsen did a really great job because she had about 5 seconds to set that up for us, and she really did. I ended up caring really deeply about them both.
And I loved her fighting. They showed her evolution where the last several movies we didn't really get to see her.
I mean, she was afraid. Hawkeye had to give her the classic speech. I'm just the guy
with a bow and arrow.
With a bow and arrow,
and that's the realest speech ever. Like, and I love that. Around this point, they've already talked about Clint. Where's Clint? And they talked about him being on, after the Sokovia Accords, he went ghost, basically. Him and his family went on a private
think
farm.
that already let us know that Ant-Man and the Wasp will take place prior to everything that's happening here, because they mentioned that they're on probation. So I would think in Ant-Man and the Wasp, they must be on the run. Whatever happens at the end of that movie, then
because
it's like,
remember,
all right, it's time to sit down.
Their futures
is
is
in a floating jail at the end of the war.
Yeah.
So was Falcon. Remember, and they made a statement here of they got busted out by Vision. Remember, they said that Vision helped bust them out, even though Vision was still working for them. He was still working for the government, but he helped bust them out. So it's kind of interesting.
Also heavily implying that Vision made up with Cap way before Stark did.
He did. No, he did, because remember, so when we go back to it, so let's rewind. I'll get back to that in a second. So the fight with Wanda and one of the Death Squads, it's the female Death Squad, and they're going in, and you're seeing her evolution where she can now fly. She can now use like a gravity thing. So her evolution of her power happened, as well as,
and it's great.
Unfortunately, we don't get to see that with Vision, because from the point of the beginning of the fight, he gets stabbed. He gets stabbed where he's no longer effective. He even said it. For some reason, I couldn't phase, which was one of his major powers, where he could phase through anything. But they had particular weapons that stopped him from phasing from the beginning.
Yeah, so he's definitely constantly injured through the battle with... and what is the name of that character with a part of Thanos' group? He's got almost like a bug type of like quality to him, but very proficient with close quarters battle. Then we move on to... Let's get to like basically the big thing that happens inside of Act 2. So inside of Act 2, 2 more stones are acquired. And the first stone is they go to nowhere. Does the group of Star-Lord, Gamora, and Drax. And they have a plan to...
Mantis.
Yes. To go ahead and get the Reality Stone back from the Collector. Unfortunately, they're too late. The Collector's already at the bottom of Thanos' boot. He's trying to figure out where the stone is at. And in typical fashion, plans, as they say, they pretty much go the same way as of mice and men. They never go well. Lenny never gets to the farm, and they never can complete a damn plan to where they can go ahead and get, an end that's going to work.
The Black Order guy you were talking about is Kovas.
Yeah, so Kovas.
Kovas Glaive.
Yeah, Kovas Glaive. Really, he's pretty much, it seems like the war dog of sorts. To use a Wakandan term. That is the close quarters battler. They're there. And then at this moment, Drax is thinking completely of his family. His wife, family, people that were all slain and murdered by Thanos. They rush in typical fashion. But unfortunately, they get thwarted because they didn't go ahead and follow the plan.
But it was even more how they got thwarted, because I loved the whole setup, because it even shows more there the development of Thanos, where he does care for Gamora, where he used the Reality Stone that he already took from dude and created a fake, made everything look like it was fine, nothing was wrong, and she thought she killed him, and when she did, she sobbed uncontrollably, and then he came out in that epic fashion. Oh, like, no, you didn't really kill me, but thank you for letting me know that you really do care. And it shows his quick adaptation of how he can use the stones.
Well, he's been studying these stones all his life, so he's the one that knows how to use them best.
And then it even shows, it goes to the little bit more earlier, which is why I love how Marvel always keeps it from the Guardians of the Galaxy 1, where he made a promise that if she got caught, he had to kill her, Gamora. And she gets caught, and at first you think he's going to be that altruistic guy where he's like, I'm not going to do it. But he does it. But Thanos, once again, showing how powerful he is, changes to bubbles.
Yeah. There was a lot of magic in that part of the story. There's a lot of magic going on.
Mental manipulation as well.
Yeah.
And I liked it because it's a nice narrative break from the idea that they're gonna fight for every single stone. Like this one, they thought they were fighting for it, but it was completely different. It was lost. Yeah, exactly. Like there was just, I really enjoyed that little piece of it.
And the part that almost tripped me out was when Drax came in to attack Thanos. He turned them into block pieces.
Yeah.
And then when Mantis came in, he turned her into silly string. When that happened in my mind, I remember sitting there thinking, like, imagine that feeling of you being a living being, and all of a sudden you become a rock.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be semi-traumatizing, as well as when you
without losing your life.
Without losing your life.
Just without losing the consciousness of what's going on.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
But again, it shows that control of how much power he really has at his literal fingertips.
Mm-hmm. We come back to the ship where Ebony Maw is torturing Doctor Strange in what looks like a galactic version of a jigsaw puzzle from Saw. I mean, he's just floating needles everywhere. He's just, now the plan has been put together by Spider-Man as well as Tony Stark to figure out how we're going to go ahead and get Strange out of here.
And in typical Spidey fashion, it was all quirks in comic books in TV shows of, have you ever seen Aliens? I love how they made that reference. And I already knew, I was like, I know what they're going to do. And it went with it, and it was just a great
Which
show.
Made sense with the ships earlier. Like, whoever is on the writing staff or the directing at Marvel is a huge fan of Aliens.
Huge nerd.
Because, so boom, hole opens up, just like the Queen going out in the original Aliens movies. Ebony Maw is gone. And I'm kind of like, I'm feeling kind of like Cottonmouth in the first season I'm just like, too soon. I was like, this is a villain that you can make some money off of, man. You don't blow the payoff like that quickly, but he's out of here.
I did like to at least showcase this time the first time of the legs, the Spider-Man legs, when Doctor Strange is basically going out the window and he catches it with the Iron Spider 3 legs and he's surprised, which is kind of like, I got to believe that the suit works with his senses like we talked about earlier, because it's throughout the movie, it's been entertaining us whenever he needs it, how he needs it.
Yeah. The technology of the suit, Stark redeems himself. That's much better than all those mock whatevers that he had.
But let's even talk about his suits. His newest suit is something spectacular. It's based off of the same kind of technology that basically the Black Panther suit is, just not vibranium. It's nano machine that are self-healing and self-replicating. He can change it upon command. So every time I saw him fight, he almost gave me a homage to the DC universe of Blue Beetle. Because Blue Beetle always had the constructs of being able to switch his to anything he needs. Yeah. And that's basically what this Iron Man suit was able to do. If he needed a bigger foot, he got a bigger foot. Any kind of cannons, swords, anything, and he had it at the tip of his fingertips. Even if a piece got destroyed, it was self-healing. So it healed itself.
Yeah.
And we only heard from Friday once in the whole movie.
I believe that suit is called the bleeding Iron Man suit or something like that.
I'm just not a fan of Iron Man. He's trash. I don't care how many suits comes up when he has. The best suit that he made, he didn't even make it, and it pretty much nearly destroyed the world, and that was Ultron. Then we move on to...
Speaking of Ultron, I gotta. You just made me think of something that was funny. Where when who was it? Someone had asked Tony where Vision was. And it was the Hulk or Bruce Banner asked where Vision was, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know." He turned off his transponder. He was like, "So you let another crazy robot loose? What happened after Ultron?" He was like, "Well, Ultron was a mistake. Like the instant defense."
They've all been mistakes. And something that wasn't a mistake was the end of Act 2, which was how the Soul Stone was gotten. In order to get there to the Soul Stone, we see that Thanos on his ship with Gamora, he shows his sister.
Before we even got to the Soul Stone, we gotta talk about Thor, because before the Soul Stone happened, Thor made it to the dwarf planet.
Yes, he did make it to the dwarf planet.
And I've been wanting to talk about that one for a minute.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna get into that.
So let's go back there.
But just talking about on the ship. They're on the ship, and that's where we see Nebula is being tortured. She's basically been pulled completely apart, ex machina like, in the way that her body is. She's constantly been tortured for we don't know how long. And once again, we see that empathy that exists between the sisters, and she has to give up where the final destination of where the Soul Stone is.
But you also see that the interaction between her and Thanatos, like the real his heart for her, where he says everything about like, I really tried to make you me. I saw you in me, and I wanted you to become the next
raise
emperor.
you.
I was trying to raise you, and you told me every day you hated me. You told me every day you hated this place. I knew this, and it's real iconic to a parent, where parents hit from their kids at certain points in their lives, where I hate you and I'm mad at you, but as a parent, you still love your child. It hurts a little bit, but you're just like, you really don't mean it, and you can see that through him. Where Nebula's kind of like that bastard stepchild. I don't really care about her, and he says it. I don't care if she lives or dies. She tried to kill me, and she almost was successful. So you either going to tell me where this is. Oh, you think you're not going to tell me? Hold on, let me show you that I know, because I can access her memory. So he brings up that memory. It's like, yeah, you got until I will destroy her.
I just wanted to touch on that scene. I felt like every time that Thanos showed some level of compassion, they always made it very quick to show some level of malice. And
everything's about balance.
Yeah, the whole entire thing was balance.
And some level of power or assertion of power. As the first two scenes that we talked about, where he showed that with Gamora is, he had that scene, like we said, where she killed him, and then he comes in and shows, this ain't real. Like,
but I'm glad.
Like my power, I can show. I created a whole world for y'all to think that, like, that's the level of power that I'll do, as well as to the level of like deviousness.
Yeah.
That it takes to think of that.
They keep writing their villains with better and better care, more and more nuance. And, and I think they really showed it with that, because they were kind of moving Thanos along a protagonist's arc, even though he's positioned opposite in all of these stories. Like,
although
the amount of time
I believe
they
he is
spend on it.
Yeah, I believe he is the protagonist.
But
I love
we'll
get into that.
I love that. He's not that typical, like what I'll call the DC bad guy. Like, I want to destroy the universe. Why? Just cause, for shits and giggles. He's like, I need to destroy half the universe so the other half could survive. And he even says it to do it by a lottery. He's like, no one should be spared. If you're rich and you're poor, I try to do it on my planet. They didn't listen.
And I think that's the bigger key, is that it's not just that he wants to do it, but it's bigger than him, and it's not even about him.
He sees it as a duty.
Yeah,
I'm the only one who
I'm
sees
I'm the only one that sees it and is in a position that can do it.
Yep.
So that it is on me. It's my responsibility, and I have to.
A lot of layers, man.
His concept is almost like, I do evil for the sake of the world. My evil will make everything better, and it almost shows you where the lottery thing is what the thing I really loved in it, because he was really like, no one's spared.
Yeah.
Like, everyone should have the equal right to live in this society to make sure the rest live.
Which, interestingly, morally separates it from the concept of genocide, where the preferred survivors are clearly delineated. Like, that, I was actually like the liberal version of that
even
somehow.
Said that each planet he went to, he never destroyed the whole entire population. He destroyed some of it,
and he didn't hurt their planet.
Yeah, the planets were always safe. So he wasn't a Galactus-esque figure where he came and he destroyed and took everything.
Well, it wasn't his original character that he's been pulled from Darkseid. He's not Darkseid.
Yeah.
And not only the other thing about that is,
in so many ways,
like we said, that it was only about half of the planet, or to enough to make sure it was to ensure success.
Yeah.
To ensure, and he, like you said, I went back to the planets, and all of them are doing
better.
He's going to the last save point. He's not doing the hard reset.
Yeah, because he prime point, he brought up Gamora's planet, and he was like, yes, I went to that planet, and I killed half. I 100% did. He admits it, and he's like, but now if you go back to that planet, they're thriving. They're doing way better than they were before, because I was their salvation. Mm-hmm. So he really has
I was strong enough to do what needed to
do
be
it.
done.
Beautiful dynamics.
Dying planet, the star where Thor gets his hammer from originally, and now he's going back there to try to forge another weapon.
And I just want to say how that is analogous to the Greek mythology of Hephaestus and the island of Lemnos.
I'm glad you brought that, because both of the themes between Norse gods and Greek gods always have a weapon master for the gods, and the difference
sky.
in the sky. The Greeks had one guy. He was like, it was me and I do everything. But the dwarfs was a whole population. This was at this particular spot in this movie, there was 500 of them originally there before Thanos came and wiped out all but one. And you have to think about that because it was a race that he committed genocide, but it was for a specific reason because he had a fear. The fear of, you guys are so great at what you can make that if you can make my gauntlet, you can make things that can kill me and destroy me. So I got to make sure for me, so I can save the world, the universe, everything, y'all have to die, but I'll save him just in case I maybe need something, but I'm taking your hands.
He made one huge mistake. He didn't give Tyrion wine.
Yes.
Because then he would have been too drunk to go ahead and make it. Because I'll be honest, I did not like the CGI
of him.
There, it looked weird. The scaling between the buildings and the placings and stuff. And maybe just because my eye is so used to Peter Dinklage's character being at a smaller stature, it just looked weird to me. I don't know. Maybe I was the only one.
Like I will say, I agree with you. I didn't like the CGI. It didn't suit the look, but I knew what they were trying to do. But it didn't look that good. That was one of the critiques I had where no matter what he was doing or how he looked, it looked off.
Yeah, it just looked like something that they did back in like the 90s or something. I don't know what it was.
I would say
weird. That whole planet was lit kind of.
What I will say is that I will give more credit to Marvel than I will to Star Wars because I did not like The Last Jedi, everybody. I just need to throw that.
He did say that last time.
But
yes, everyone is saying I'm in the minority.
Yes, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But is the deviation of planets and sceneries, like each place felt different.
Yes. Yeah. It really felt like a planet.
Maybe it was because it basically is a planet that's a coal mine, so to speak. So maybe that's the reason why it's said like that.
Well, technically, as we know, it's not really a planet. It's a star. It's a dying dwarf star, which is why.
My point was just the fact that like every scene just felt different. Every location was different, and I didn't feel that in another movie.
But it also, because it kind of reminds me of how this is like, it's a compilation of many different comic book storylines, and it's just the acts are so separated.
This is one of
that feeling contributes to that.
Like, they went to the star, it was dead and it wasn't on, and he was like, what was going on? Everyone's gone, and it was just the one dwarf left. And he talks about his hands being done. For a minute I was a little like, God, how they gonna have this happen? And what hammer we all know he's getting a hammer. What hammer he was getting? I went through a list of all the hammers Thor's ever had, and the one I was hoping Storm. Storm, was it Storm Chaser? Stormbreaker. I was like, oh my God, because that's hit. Stormbreaker is the ultimate version of Thor's hammer. For those of you who don't know, there's a universe called the Ultimate Universe where everybody's at their full potential, they're strongest who they are. And Stormbreaker is Thor's ultimate weapon. So when he sat there and said, this is a mold for Stormbreaker, I was instantly like, I was in love. Because the hammer itself it's a hammer axe. It's the epitome of what he wants. It's offensive and defensive. And it's bigger. It was everything. So, and also I have to give credit to Thor once again, because as you said earlier, Alanna, Thor's always showed his resiliency. Yeah. And when it broke, he straight up said, I'm going to go in between a star and let it fry me, while everyone else said was like, yo, die. And he's like, not if it kills me first. And then, the dwarf was like, that's what
they needed that scene in there because there was no helicopters for Chris, what's his name, to go ahead and hold on there. So we needed a bicep shot. So this whole entire scene, to me, you're not smart, Marvel. It was all designed for the bicep shot.
It was that perfect left and right?
And it also, again, highlighted the balance that we were talking about. The last Thanos scene we saw was an exertion of his power. Now we're seeing on the opposite, that was the evil side of exertion of power. We're seeing the positive exertion of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we also see a very iconic talk. We've thought about, you said Groot, which I love when they had him, because Groot's still being a teenager. He's chilling. He's playing his game. While he's dying, while Thor's on the ground dying because of, the poisoning, the dwarf is running around looking for the handle. And Groot does what Groot does. He's like, okay, you know what? He kind of had I am Groot. I'll do this for y'all. I got y'all. I really don't want to help y'all, but I'm going to do it. And makes the handle. And it's a beautiful compilation where it's too hot and it burns him, but he gets through it to make sure he can keep Thor alive.
Yeah. And I think that made sense also because you saw that there was going to be a connection. They said it earlier, which we talked about with the fact that Thor understood Groot. Yeah. So there are probably many weapons in Asgard that had handles based off of the people that Groot comes from. So that was interesting that he immediately knew, like, all right, let me go ahead and give my arm out here and do this for you.
Because if we want to go by the comic books, we believe a lot of people have a theory that Groot's people are part of or are some kind of ancestral linkage to the world tree, that they were made from it. Everything's made from it, but from the actual wood itself, they are part of it. Which is why when Groot came back as a kid, if you ever read the Groot, technically Groot died. That person died. The twig is his child. This is why he's going through all being a child to a grown person again. It's a brand new Groot, or because Groot is the name.
And just interestingly, you were just talking about them being part of the Tree of Life, right? Yggdrasil, I think, is the name of the Tree of Life, and they talk about it in Captain America 1.
Yeah. They do.
Yeah, it's nice to see that go back to the beginning as well.
They keep it woven in, and I love that where it keeps the mythology of the Marvel together.
Yeah, and speaking of mythology and Captain America 1, which on the timeline spectrum really is what starts everything out in the MCU. It's fitting moving into the end of Act 2, which is my favorite scene, is Gamora and Thanos on this planet getting ready to go ahead and grab the Soul Stone. And as they are climbing up to the top of the mountain, literally, and also its figurative meaning, then the gatekeeper at the top of the mountain, the Reaper, we finally see the return. Where is he at? Red Skull
since
appears.
Captain America 1.
Since Captain America 1, I, for one, thought that he would be maybe in the position of like an Ebony Maw, and he would have found Thanos similar as they have done inside the animated versions, where then he becomes kind of a person that's a part of Thor or Thanos' Legion to be able to go ahead and get back at the Avengers. But it was so cool to see him. He's giving this cautionary tale, and it's real too, where he says, okay, it's at the bottom at this abyss, but you have to be able to give up something you love. The Red Skull loves no one and nothing.
So he could
never have ever
a
gone
soul
down
for
there.
a soul.
So it's a soul for soul.
The other part that
Gamora reads him about it too.
Yeah, the other part I don't want us to skip over is he said exactly what happened. He was like, a lot of us never thought about the Tesseract doesn't kill unless you touch it and you weren't strong enough, but it transformed him to a different planet. He went to this planet and learned about the stone from being in space. So it brought him to the other side of the universe to try to give him something. Which it kind of shows the connection of all the stones.
All the stones are trying to find each other.
They're trying to find each other, and they know if you can find one and control one, you can get to the rest. So it was interesting, that little tidbit of we sent you to here. You know what I'm saying?
And then we get the scene, which I think everybody in the theater knew what was happening except for Gamora, because I knew what was happening. And we get this.
She was late.
We get this beautiful scene where we look down into the abyss. She starts laughing at Thanos because she just saw you don't have a soul. You don't have anything that you care about. This is just desserts. She starts laughing, and then she sees him crying. She's talking about tears, and any person that's perceptive basically was all like, oh no, he's not crying for him. He's crying for you.
She can't see the trees amongst the forest.
Yeah.
No. Because there were no trees and no forests at the top of that hill. And similar to almost a biblical sense of Abraham.
It was
taking that to the top, taking the lamb to the top of the mountain. And
even how he grabbed her. He grabbed her before he threw her. The grab of the arm is kind of the grab you do for a kid that's acting out. Yeah. When you need your kid to come, you're not trying to hurt them, but you grab the arm to get him to go. And he just had, if you even looked at it, he had that remorse as well as...
He couldn't look at her as he did it.
Because like I said, the biblical sense, like Abraham, two go up to the top of the mountain, but only one returns. Mm-hmm. And at that moment then, he flings Gamora into the abyss. And then we get a very cool, which a lot of people had alluded and figured that the Soul Stone would be on Wakanda because the way that their technology works and the way that the astral plane happens between T'Challa and all of his past ancestors. Mm-hmm. But we got a similar type of astral plane, which I believe that Thanos may have been in the Soul Stone, or maybe in the Soul Stone. And Gamora is there
because it's his soul. When you control the soul stone, it becomes part of your soul. So as we've seen throughout this movie, in his soul is Gamora, and it's his physical representation of when he first met her. That is his representation of the innards of his soul, which is still that kind of sweet concept because he's inside. You would think his soul would be misery and hate. It's pretty peaceful.
His daughter, in fact.
It allows you to build empathy.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of the most important stones as it is in this movie. But going forward to the sequel, I believe it, as well as the time and the reality, those three are probably going to be the most important stones.
So now remember, at this point, he has the soul stone, he has the power stone, and he has the space and time stone. He has three out of
not time, just space.
Not yet.
The Tesseract is space and time.
No,
my bad. Not space. Yeah, you're right. Because time is the green one. My bad. Faux pas. But he has three of the major stones, so that's half of what he already needs, and will only be like an hour and a half into the movie.
We've talked about the fact that now Thor has Stormbreaker. They're on their way, basically. Similar to Battle of the Bastards in Game of Thrones. We have a lot of Game of Thrones references here because it's a great show. The battle shall ensue on Titan. And they're going to his former past home world. They have now dug in, and it's going to be a battle for the Time Stone. Stark is upset that Strange is there in the first place, but Strange has already gone through, as he said, he meditates for a moment as they're on their way there, and he goes through over 14 billion different possibilities and different outcomes of what could happen. And when he awakes from his meditation, he exclaims to them that there's only one outcome of them winning.
And there's a major part that I love is when they were on the ship and they were talking about, let's go here. So you saw a weakness in Iron Man. Because Iron Man says something along the lines of, they're also like, hey, can't you turn the thing around? That's, Spider-Man as well as Doctor Strange says, let's turn this thing around. But Iron Man says, no, let's take the fight to him. I've already seen him once. I'm still reliving the trauma of what he did to me last time.
And once again, in his selfishness of just, this is about you, Tony.
So we're going to go do it. And so you see, once again, he's going through that trauma still, but he's still an asshole. And Doctor Strange says something that later we find out is not true, but he was like, don't worry. If it ever comes through it between you or that boy, you both can die. I'm taking this stone. And if you were to believe that, that's a real cold thought, but it's the actual the best thought. Because you need to make sure he doesn't get the stone, and no matter what happens to them, the whole universe are two people. And with that point, it kind of showed that. And then as we head to, Titan and he crashes, we're ready for that. And he's like, well, we already know he knows where we're at, so we don't really need to do nothing. We just need to wait.
And when he comes for them,
they
are prepared. There was a little bit of bickering back and forth. Peter Quill, Star-Lord, giving Tony Stark the absolute business.
But I love their interaction. When they first met, of course, and they thought they were enemies. And you and DeRa talked about it earlier, is the father figure being a weakness. And that's the first time you see it. Because Quill gets Spider-Man and puts it to his head. And since they don't know Quill, he says, I'll blow this kid because he knows he's a kid. Brains out if you don't let Drax go. And Drax would be their version because of his mentality, because he is based off of a person that has autism that he doesn't exactly know. So he's still, it's both of their weaknesses, but two super strong characters at that too. But that father figure concept still being a weakness.
Yeah. There was the vouch that exists there where basically it reminded me almost of like two fraternities getting ready to be for two chapters inside of a fraternity. And then there was one person where they're like, Thor sent us here. They're like, oh, you know Thor? Okay, you good. That, once again, it's like, because you just had to think, how are they going to merge all these storylines, all these characters, everything together?
Blend.
But it blended by making sure that the relationships of meeting the right people at the right time happened to progress the story.
And they also didn't shy away from how it's awkward. Like, they took most of those opportunities to make some really great jokes.
Yeah. Awesome jokes.
I don't like your plan, so let's go with my plan. My plan is not stupid like yours.
Yeah.
Because they kept that where in the one theme that they made sure that it kept with Iron Man was his trauma, his ignorance, as well as his pride was a problem from every movie. And it's been consistent. It's kind of interesting because you've seen it evolve, change, get worse, and then take the biggest landfall ever since Ultron.
Yeah. And I think he makes the greatest evolution. So while the battle is happening, they have developed a plan where they're utilizing the it's almost akin to people that play the MMOP type of video games. Every person has their own role in how they're going to defeat this ridiculous type of giant that is Thanos. Spider-Man is moving around. Doctor Strange is
totally a raid.
Yeah, like it's like
Doctor Strange is
Leroy Jenkins. They just came right in there.
And like Doctor Strange teleporting people around. You got Iron Man. He's
Drax
basically
is
the tape.
out here cutting. He's doing the hard work, slicing and dicing.
And they get him at a wonderful pin down where he's tied down a little bit from Spider-Man's web.
on his head.
Mantis on his head, messing with his mind. So he's reliving trauma because that's what she does. She put emotions and she relives.
And she's having a hard time of holding it. And then to piggyback off of what you were talking about earlier, Reddy, one of the seminal moments of Tony Stark coming completely full circle when we looked at Captain America Civil War, when he saw the video of Bucky, the Winter Soldier, gunning down his parents, particularly seeing his mom die. There was nothing that Cap could say to him to get him out of that rage. And how ironic to go ahead, then fast forward 3 years from that time frame within inside of this universe, and they have it. They're there. They're getting the gauntlet off of Thanos, about to defeat him, but then Mantis is on top of the head, and all of these feelings are coming out of Thanos, and Quill is trying to figure out where is Gamora. And Tony Stark instantly realizes what's going to happen.
Yep.
And he's trying to pull Star-Lord away, and he's like, you just put it out of your mind. But just like with him, when he saw his mother die, there was nothing that could happen with that level of rage.
He lost the love of his life. And I mean, you got to think about it. Through the whole movie, they were showing that progression that he was in love with her. That even when they asked, is this your like boyfriend or something like that? He's like, no, we're kind of like cool friends, sleeping together, buddies. But, it's that still awkward state for them. And the rage hit, even though Spider-Man and Iron Man was like, we're almost there. Like the glove is basically off. And the minute he says it, hats off to Chris Pratt because he showed it in his face. He broke.
Really did. It was great.
He broke, and we've all had like that feeling or thought before, like that break, like I have to kill you now.
And that's a great point, Ben, that it is a reversal for Stark because emotions make you lose, right? Like Iron Man loses that fight at the end of Civil War, and they get their asses kicked because of this mistake. Yeah.
I mean, then Thanos gets up. He starts going ham. The man, if we talked about MMOPs and stuff, we're talking about video game type of things. The man,
he boss moved everybody.
He takes his fist with the Power Stone and crushes and cracks a dwarf moon and uses it as projectiles to throw at his enemies.
And that shit right there is dope because that shows he had no issues grabbing and destroying a fucking moon to kill you.
And I mean, obviously on that planet, gravity works a little bit differently.
Yeah.
The moment that I saw Mantis that crack, I was like, so are we going to lose about half of the Avengers right here? Because I'm like, the whole planet should be just in flux, like with a moon just cracking. But,
But I mean, when they even said that in the beginning, when they first landed, if you look in the background, Mantis is like kind of jumping and floating.
Yeah, because they said
like
there was something off about what had happened.
Looking like she's on a trampoline.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's something off with that planet, which... I think they probably will in the sequel to this film probably touch a little bit more on what had actually happened to Titan and what place Thanos took inside of the destruction of Titan or didn't take. At the end of that scene, then things are looking dire. We already know what's about to happen. However, my favorite part, of course, now we go to Wakanda and Vision is there and we get Princess Shuri and she's having a conversation with Bruce Banner as they're trying to go ahead and take the stone off of Vision so that Vision doesn't have to die, but he can be removed from the Mind Stone. And she's just like, well, why didn't you just go ahead and do this and take a little bit of this and that? And he's just like... because we didn't think of it. But at the same time, in their defense, they were working with vibranium, which is pretty new to them. And that's something that she's been working with her entire life and has developed all of the tech and, the great things that they have at Wakanda. And just jumping forward, this whole entire battle and scene showed and proved that later on, when we get Ms. Marvel's movie, we're going to get more into the Kree, which was first introduced with Ronan the Destroyer. We've seen the Asgardians. Eventually we'll probably get the scroll. We have all these other type of like Marvel entities. I mean, they've got the 20th Century Fox thing, all these other companies. At some point in time, you got to tell the story.
So the only reason I don't think we'll get that in the Miss Marvel movie is because it's in between between this Infinity Wars and the next one. There's only 2 new Marvel movies that, besides of course Deadpool.
Oh no! I'm not saying that we're going to get those movies inside this time frame. I'm just saying it's going to happen within inside of the MCU. But as I'm saying is, Wakanda ranks as a Earth nation up there with any other nation in the entire galaxy. When you look at the amount of tech that they had, the dwarf, Colvin, all of Thanos' like army that was coming through, that shield was holding up. Yeah, and I love that because they showed it where when the first one came, not only was no one really too worried, they were just like, oh yeah, something's coming. And then when it hit the top of the dome, it shattered. It blew the fuck up and was gone. I love this place. And then, I love this place because anywhere else in the world, it would have destroyed half of their city. And they had to put it on the outskirts of the city to even try to get into Wakanda. And the only reason they got in is because they understood, like, if we don't let a little bit in, they're gonna crack us from all sides. It was a strategy point. It was the only reason why they got in. So that just to me just showed that I'm like, I mean, the level of strategy and tech, like Wakanda is right at the top of any nation in the universe. Yeah, for being able to defend themselves.
The shield alone killed Obsidian, which is one of Thanos' top warriors. When the shield alone, just him dragging through the shield. And it even blew up one of their spaceships that landed on it. It blew up their whole ship that had who knows how many warriors and little creatures that was coming through.
And think about it. Remember when the beginning monsters came running in, they were just literally sacrificing hundreds of their lives just on the shell itself.
Yeah, Okoye had mentioned that. She's like, oh my gosh.
They're killing themselves. And you saw them, like, even the ones that could even kind of get in, they were getting cut in half and they were dying.
And it was awesome to see all of Wakanda out there. It's awesome to go ahead and see the quick little aside that we had where you go ahead and have the White Wolf and they're just all like, hey, are you ready to go? And he just said, where's the battle at?
Where's the battle?
With his vibranium and he gets the vibranium arm.
I love that shit.
They're all there in battle, just lined up. We get the great line from Okoye just talking about, if you were going to open up the world, like, I thought perhaps we might, like,
get a
Starbucks or something.
Or at the Olympics.
Yeah, the Olympics or a Starbucks, which, I mean, the Olympics, would be awesome in Wakanda.
Yeah. But even with that, I love the setup of all the major superheroes. You got the whole Cap team. And then you even have the...
Inside of the Hulkbuster suit.
In the Hulkbuster, you got Hank, you got Bruce Banner in there, but he still can't control. And you see the Dora Milaje look at him like, oh, this fool when he trips. Like, oh, we're going to battle with this idiot?
Yeah.
Like, so it's still even that homage, like, we're better. And I love this scene for so many reasons. Like, once again, it showcases something we don't normally see in a lot of superhero movies. The females are not damsels in distresses. The scene where the, it was Scarlet Witch, it was Black Widow, and what's the Dora Milaje female name?
It was Okoye, Scarlet Witch, and Black Widow. First it was Black Widow and Okoye versus the woman that was with the crew of the Black Order. Yeah. And so they're battling, and the moment I just saw them, they just gave a nod to each other like, okay, game Proxima. And they just gave a look to each other. Proxima was in the middle, and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. You've got probably one of the greatest women warriors
in the world
the USSR could go ahead and create. Yep. And you've got, the leader and general of Wakanda, and they're taking them out. And then in typical just great Okoye fashion, when Scarlet Witch comes in and like does all these great things, she's all like, why didn't you bring her down here in the first place? And I'm just like, we're all thinking that, like, damn.
Her entrance is so perfect where they have the new, the like tires of death coming through, and she just drops down and picks the shit up and destroys half the army and just like, shit. Yeah, you got a good weapon up there.
McCoy's like, y'all's strategy is trash.
Yeah, but basically, it's all like, this is the Avengers strategy.
But if you were watching, that was also what they were waiting for, because the minute the Black Order, Proxima saw her get on the battlefield, she said she went down. And she sent the other guy in to attack.
Yeah, Colvin then came in, made it easier to try to go ahead and get to Vision which Shuri tried her best to go ahead and defend. Side note, too, it was awesome just hearing, which I think it was in Yoruba, where he told him, brother, to where you have M'Baku greeting T'Challa, and that was absolutely awesome that the Jabari now are on a level to where they can be called upon. They're friends. We got to hear Masa, and I'm like, okay, like here we go. And M'Baku was holding his own too out there on the battlefield. Quick question though, which is interesting, which I don't know. Maybe then he becomes a villain in the second Black Panther movie. Where the hell was W'Kabi at?
Where the hell was W'Kabi?
Because people were there.
W'Kabi got arrested in Wakanda fashion. We don't know how that court system works.
Yeah, we don't know where, but W'Kabi's gonna appear again.
We would hope.
So that's interesting to see. I mean, his tribe is there.
New leader.
Yeah, well, I mean, his uncle's probably that was on the council's probably controlling them.
Nakia not there.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, she's always around the world and some spies type stuff.
But
it's true.
Favorite part of the battle, I'm not gonna lie, was when they came in and all of a sudden Thor, because a Stormbreaker has the Bifrost. It can travel through the realms with his power. So I love that instant come in and then how Thor introduces him. Oh, this is my friend, the rabbit. And what do we call Groot, the stick? He was like, this is the stick. And it was just kind of like, wait, what? And you Groot fashion just starts running and it gets real angry. And destroys some shit. And it's awesome. They're the intro to now everybody's really starting to meet each other.
And that's a great segue with then one of my favorite scenes in this battle with the rabbit, Rocket Raccoon, with his pistols blazing and then getting picked up by the Winter Soldier and them just spinning around, swinging, having mutual respect and a bromance kind of going on between the two of them.
That's a good word.
And as that's happening, he's just all like, hey, where'd you get that arm from?
He's like, hey, how much for the gun? And then he's like, no, not for sale. He's like, what about the arm? And then he just gives him that look like, nigga, you know I ain't selling my arm.
And then he's just all like, I'm going to get that arm. Oh. Which we heard that when he got the eyeball. So I cannot wait for when Rocket Raccoon is going to steal the arm.
I'll try to. Because he even said when he got the eye, he was like, oh yeah, so he gave you an eye? No, he gave me 100,000 credits. I came back at the middle of the night to get the eye. And then he was like, you probably should have watched that first. I had to smuggle up the Stormbreaker coming in, doing massive damage was beautiful.
It was classic. I loved it.
And it was really great to then see almost all of the realms then are now, the good parts of the realms are battling against Thanos.
But then when we go back, the part that my favorite part in the whole movie was when you really get to see, so I'm jumping from Wakanda real quick and going back to Thanos, is when Doctor Strange really shows why he's OP as hell. Where he basically goes one-on-one with Thanos, and he does that multiple manipulation where he makes like 20 or 30 of himself and holds down Thanos. But because of the stones, he has no set for him. But it shows why he's so OP, though. Because he is one of the most powerful people in the universe, but you just don't see it. People always think it was because of his stone. And we saw through that battle that he didn't even have the stone on him.
That's true.
Yeah, so with that being said, we're pretty much near the end of the movie here. Colvin is the last member of the Black Order that's left. He is hunting down Wanda as well as hunting down Vision to try to get to him. Vision's sustaining a lot of damage. Yep. But in typical fashion, here comes Cap to go ahead and save the day. Mm-hmm. And what did y'all think about that scene?
It's iconic Cap. Yeah, I mean, he was the only person I thought could have done it. Because he had to come in and he had to show he was still the dude. Where he came in and he stopped them. He's the reason why they didn't die. And they were even able to get away in the beginning.
It's the end. And Thanos is squaring off against the Avengers that are left. Now. He has the Time Stone. He has it all. And he's just needing one last stone that's right in front of him. So the play has always been destroy the stone. Wanda doesn't want to, but she's trying to go ahead and destroy the stone as the Avengers are trying to go ahead and fight Thanos off. He thwarts all of them, but doesn't get there in time. The stone is destroyed, but he has the Time Stone. Pulls it all back, then rips it literally outside of Vision's forehead.
And with both of those, it showcased so much. You really got to see the full power of Wanda, which if she could, with all 5 stones on her, she was able to hold him back and still destroy one stone. It's showing how vast her powers are, because other people...
Which I never really got it. They make her powers as if it's the reality stone, but her and her brother were experimented on with the Tesseract, the space stone. Yeah. So that's kind of like a little bit of, you know...
What I've been reading is ever since Fox kind of brought him back, they want to kind of go back with her being a mutant. So with her... Because her powers as a mutant is really reality bending. Yeah. And they've always kind of forced it in, because if you remember in the beginning, she kind of almost had Tesseract power where it's gravity kind of stuff, or she moves shit around. But now it's kind of like, I can alter anything, because she's flying, she's grabbing, and extra stuff. It was a beautiful moment. But when you saw the corpse of Vision change colors and you saw his real death, it was kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
It really was.
But Scarlet Witch's power also has a strange empathetic ability too. Like she uses it to read
emotions and feelings.
Yeah, to read things from Vision, who doesn't have a human brain, I suppose, is an important point. But and also it's benign, right? Like it didn't do anything physical to him. It was completely thought-based power.
Remember, they did kind of talk about his mind when they were talking about removing it, where they said because of how he was created, he is the Mind Stone. He's Tony. He's Ultron. He's Bruce Banner. So if you just take one of those parts out, he still has all the rest of it, because he's been evolving. He's been becoming something more than just a robot.
It's a nice idea.
Oh, it was.
So to finish things out, Thor comes in, swoops in with the big axe.
Straight to the chest.
And as Thanos told him, you should have gone ahead and gone for my head. And in one of the most iconic scenes to ever be drawn into panel of comics, Thanos snaps his fingers and it's done. Reality forever changed with the power of all the stones, the space of people moving, it all merges together. We see then that the gauntlet looks like it completely is fried and busts.
And his arm too. If you look at his whole arm in the gauntlet, it looks like it's basically destroyed. So I was wondering about that, because every time in the comic books he used it on a major scale like that, they get reset, because they can't really be
basically
destroyed.
like Dragon Balls.
They go back
all
out.
flying. So there will probably be another race to get the stones in the next movie. He uses his powers or what's left maybe of the Space Stone to go into the back, and then we start seeing ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and people just start melting away and disappearing.
And for me, one of my saddest moments, but it was also a good outro for a character, was Spider-Man. When they were
that was a tearjerker.
Yeah, you could see he was still young, because
he said, "I don't want to die.
I don't want to die. I'm not ready. Help me, Mr. Stark." And you can see he's only 16.
He's only 16, yeah.
He's only 16. So the rest of these people are fighting. That's what they try to. The father figure. Everyone's like in their 30s, 40s, and
I wish Tony would have gone away, but we've got other ones that.
Black Panther, Vision,
Black Panther
Witch.
going away, which is interesting about Black Panther going away, because I was looking at some toys in the toy line. And if you're a fan of anime, and especially Dragon Ball, they'll often let you know where they're going, because they put out the marketing for the toys earlier on. Yeah. And I saw in their Legends Marvel series, which shame on Marvel, though, and the toy companies, because they haven't made enough Black Panther toys yet for all the money that's been made.
They have not.
So one of them that's been made is a Black Panther with two different faces and heads, and the T'Challa head dang near looks like Terrence Howard, so they did a terrible job with that. But then the other head is Okoye. I'm wondering if Okoye is going to go ahead in the next Avengers movie and don the mantle of the Black Panther and the suit, at least, because I see that as a possible. A lot of people are going to say Shuri, but I think they're going to wait till Black Panther 3. I doubt it, and I think it'd be bad if they did make it Shuri that quickly. She's the exact reasons that you just said for Spider-Man. But she's just a girl. She's 16.
To me, the only reason why I think it would be a good, so if it was like she's donned the mantle until they bring him back, because we know he's coming back. T'Challa's coming back.
But whoever wears the mantle of the Black Panther has to be the ruler of Wakanda, and that would mean that she'd have to go ahead and survive a challenge for the throne without the suit, and she's toast.
But she's also the next heir to the throne, though.
I'm saying, though,
but they all are. All the different tribes have heirs to the throne, and that's
they're all
why
allowed
they're able
to
to go ahead and be able to challenge.
That's true.
And in a sign of war, what usually happens?
Yeah.
In the sign of war, the Joint Chiefs of Staff usually will go ahead and take over if it's, president's gone, basically, vice president, all these type of things, because I'm pretty sure Romana might have disappeared now. Who knows who's gone? We're sure he's probably still there.
No, they saw Shuri was still there.
I would like to throw out this theory that Okoye becomes the Black Panther.
She at least wears a suit. I wouldn't say she's going to become the Black Panther.
That she takes the mantle of the Black Panther, and they kind of merge the Shuri Black Panther story with Okoye.
How so?
And just
like how they merge characters all the time.
Yeah, just how they did with Lupita Nyong'o's character, Nikita's.
They merged Queen Divine Justice with other characters that existed, her backstory.
So I'm saying I think they'll do that with Okoye, and then for the Shuri story, they'll go to I don't remember the name. I think it's Onye, the figure that she becomes to eventually after she becomes Black Panther, like her own character, which has even surpassed the powers of Black Panther.
Yeah. And with him dying, who knows, maybe that's where they bring in the whole thing where it's like maybe he no longer can then be the Black Panther, so he'll have to go ahead and get all of the powers from maybe using the Soul Stone or something like that from his own people, because that's where he gets all the powers from all the elders that are Panthers. But they've got Panther 2 and 3 and those things to figure out. But I just thought it was interesting that Panther went to Ash, but Okoye didn't, and just starting to see toy lines where they have her having an interchangeable head to go ahead and have the suit. I thought that's interesting.
For me, what kind of threw me off is how many Avengers they let get wiped out. Because when I was really watching this before, I thought I knew a couple were going to die. But when I counted all together, there was like 11 to 14 technically different Avengers that were wiped out. There was less Avengers that survived than that actually.
Got to bringing in new ones, because that's more toys. That's the other thing.
Reset.
So the reset.
So I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because if we go to the post-credit scene, we get to see Nick Fury in the car with what's her name, Robin, whatever, his number 2, the lady, and they get in a car accident. They go to a car.
Miss Hill,
thank you. Go to the car, there's nobody in the car. All of a sudden, they look around, people start disappearing. Then he pulls out this beeper, she disappears, and he starts disappearing. He says, "Oh shit," drops the beeper. And then in beeper, you have the symbol for Miss Marvel.
Yeah, which I was saddened, because I was like, please be Charles Xavier, please be Charles Xavier.
I know what it means.
I was like, please. So that was something that I had problems with the post credits.
20th Century Fox and Disney got out of bed in time to get that in their bed.
Yeah, that
I don't know.
The next Avengers movie.
So I was highly disappointed with the post credit scene, because it started racking my brain for these things. Is if that is the case, okay, it was a pager. Let's just say that the pager happens to go ahead and be an intergalactic pager, because if Ms. Marvel is supposed to have, or Captain Marvel is supposed to go ahead and have her Kree powers. The Kree have already been established with Ronan the Destroyer, and the Nova Corp was in trouble. Yep. Did she come to help? No. Inside at Avengers movie 1, you have alien crafts coming into the world. Did she come to help? No. She doesn't show up then. Then you have Ebony Maw and all these people right there, like Thanos' Black Order. She's nowhere to be found. So I'm like, some people would say, well, she's off-world. Or so then I'm like, okay, well, let's just say that this pager, because remember, the movie is supposed to be set in the 90s. They've already put out photos where you can see Sam Jackson with like terrible LeBron James painted on hair. So that movie's going to be set in the 90s, and it's going to be a prequel to all these other movies. So with that being said, where the hell is Captain Marvel? It almost made no sense to me, where I'm all like, you're kind of like really, unless y'all are really going to explain this well, unless she's like on ice or something like that, like Supergirl,
or think about like
you're doing a disparaging thing to her.
They're probably going to do some junk where she just hasn't got a power jet. That she gets her power.
No, but her movie is going to be a prequel in the 90s, and he seeing that the world is going to hell. Page Ms. Marvel. Where the hell was Page Ms. Marvel when Thanos was first attacking the first time with Loki?
Oh yeah, with New York.
With New York. And just on one other segment, because I want you guys to answer that and answer something else, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe has let it be known that they use continuity with the Marvel shows that are on Netflix. They talk about the incident and all these other things. Obviously, Luke Cage is going to come out in basically a couple of weeks, and Jessica Jones has already been out. So the next one would either be Defenders season 2, or it would be going into like season 3 of Daredevil.
It'll be season 4.
Or season 4 of Daredevil. So when that happens, I gotta believe they better
talk about it. Yeah.
Either they're gonna have to talk about it where people disappeared, or maybe they're already gone. Or I could see. Do you think that Marvel's basically gonna say the time that's between Avengers 1 and Avengers 2 is like 2 days? And so like when everybody comes back, nobody remembers it. But as of right now, New York is fucked up. Like, is Daredevil around? Luke Cage talking about it?
I think for those side that it's gonna be before. They're gonna make it like at the end of the season. It's gonna be the beginning of like Infinity Wars. They're gonna make it cut off like right before that, so they could then think about how they're gonna get them together, because they have said they do want to have them somehow connect, but not completely connect.
Yeah,
I think they're gonna cut it off right then and there.
Expensive as fuck.
Because even with Jessica Jones, like spoilers, just quick. If you haven't seen Jessica Jones,
you'd be spoiling it for me, and I wouldn't care. I'm sorry.
Me
I had to
too.
stop.
I
had to stop. I tried to watch season 2. It just wasn't good.
Anything, so it won't really be a spoiler. The only thing I will say is how Jessica Jones proceeded. It had no connection to anything else we would have seen in any major way.
Well, even when they've written that character, they never really give a
her
background of like where she really gets her powers from. Or
No.
Like
I'm
that.
not even talking about powers. I'm just talking about the story of what happens and what she goes through.
With that being said, I think it's interesting. I gotta believe though, it would be really cool if in Daredevil season 4 it is to where people are missing, because that could be something to where remember Kingpin and all these folks started taking advantage of Hell's Kitchen because of what happened in the incident with the Shatari situation the first time around in the first place. So now if you had a bunch of superheroes like Luke Cage is gone and all, Misty Knight and all these people are gone, then it'd be just perfect breeding ground for either the Hand or for Kingpin to try to go ahead and take back over, and then maybe that's where it's like Luke Cage is gone, so Daredevil needs some help, and he calls up Frank Castle, and now you got like, him joining the Defenders. But there's a lot of possibilities, but I just think it's interesting with that. But going back to the first part of it, so where do you guys think Ms. Marvel is?
I think the only way they can explain Ms. Marvel is if literally they keep her off world where she had no way of getting any kind of contact. Because, if you think about Thor in general, when he wasn't on Earth, and Hulk, they had no clue what was going on Earth. When they came back, they made multiple jokes like, I got to catch you up. So I got to think she's maybe, fighting Kree out in space somewhere far away, and then she's gonna in the Galactic pages. It's gonna begin of her movie, bam, and then she's gonna run back.
Also, is it a pager because she's been in a different time or a different?
See, that's another reason.
Maybe
Well, that's another reason why I thought it was a pager, because I'm like, it's the '90s. That's when he met her, so it's like she probably was like, "Hey, page me," but I'm like,
who uses a pager anymore?
But something going on maybe with a sort of a Doctor Strange type angle.
Or what I'm thinking what it might be, similar to a Doctor Strange type angle, is the last time she used her powers and was involved in something, maybe Innocence died, and she's just been walking amongst people.
A Black Lightning
and it just
quote, retired, unquote.
And retired, and she's supposed to be like the super OP level powers.
Yeah, she is
so
a
maybe
beast.
That's one of the reasons where she even tells Nick Fury, like, there's other metahumans and other people out here. Maybe you should get them together. Do something like only call me
if you need me.
It's absolutely dire. Completely like there's other people out here.
Again,
you got
but because that would be like a Star Wars story. It'd be like Luke hanging out on space islands.
So I still can't go
even
with
though
that.
You don't like it over there.
No, I still can't go with that, because just like you said, even if you are retired, you're like, you may not need me. If you walking down the street and the yoke is getting fucked up, and you got the powers of like basically Superman, because she's basically she's Superwoman of this world, and you don't do nothing, you're a fucked up person.
But one last thing, which might be interesting, I'm just thinking of like trying to expand the story and give like reasons why. Maybe also the moment that she starts using her powers, it almost gives off a radiation similar to the Hulk, how people are always able to trace her gamma radiation, to where if she starts doing that, then she alerts the Kree, and the Kree, which that would then be a great segue into
the next thing,
the phase 4, where it's like, all right, now we're like into an intergalactic war with other like worlds.
That is one of my themes, because after I finished Infinity War movie, I wanted to see what were the next set of movies that was coming out before the next Infinity War. With only next 2 sets, as we talked about earlier,
like Spider-Man
nope, it's Ant-Man and Wasp, and then Captain Marvel. Then it's the next Infinity War movie.
Yeah.
So I kind of think they did it perfectly, because now they kind of give those actors a break for a second, you could say, and focus on the three new sets of actors they want to bring to the universe, as well as they can explain why whatever they're doing, there's no other superheroes around because they're so stressed thin where they can't even help. And then Captain Marvel is going to be that. I think it's going to be that introduction to trying to fix the world again. Because that may have been the whole reason Nick Fury texted her.
1 second, I just want to throw this in though about the Captain Marvel thing is the fact that that's pretty reckless if you're waiting to that moment to contact Ms. Marvel, because as we said, when Thanos did that, it's random. She could be one of the ones that got erased.
Exactly.
So if you wait to that moment to use,
but they would never even know that though.
No. But I'm saying he doesn't know that. But it's the point of
you should have been had her in.
Yeah, that'd be. You already know that he was coming for the stones, and you already know you might not have an idea of what the power that they hold. But
That's
you know
why I
that
gotta believe what Alanna and I kind of feel in here. I gotta believe that she's on a Luke Skywalker type of like redemption story where it's like something happened. Which let's remember too, this is gonna be set in the 90s where the U.S. is first probably going to come into contact with her, as in Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. What are they trying to do with everything? They're going to want to use her as a weapon. So whether it's either her, anger towards S.H.I.E.L.D. and what they've maybe tried to do to her, or to try to go ahead and protect the world from having the Kree come through an invasion. I just got to think that she's not off world. She's been on world the whole entire time, and it just must have been something must have happened so dire that of a fallout that she was just all don't contact me.
But the only reason I can't go with that is because then why would you need the old school ass pager that not only the old school ass pager, but it took a hella long time to send, and it had a
why
video.
I think that? I think he held on to that pager and he's hoping that. I don't think it was a press the button, all right, you're on your way. I think it was oh my God, please, please, please see this. I don't know where you are, what's happened to you, but we need you right now.
A desperate SOS.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. So what did you all think about the final scene? We got so excited to talk about Captain Marvel and the post-credit scene. The final scene, which is one of my favorite scenes in the history of comic books, to where in the comic, at the very end of a different type of ending for the Infinity War, Thanos goes back to this farm and this character, Adam Warlock, and he goes to go see Thanos, and it's so much time has elapsed, but it really hasn't, and Thanos is just a farmer. And he remembers the power that he had of the gauntlet, and he talks about it with Warlock because he was able to wield it. But I like how they took some of that and they come back to this small little shack.
Yeah.
And you see the cornfields there, and he's just a simple man just sitting down.
Retired.
And he's retired, and he's at peace with himself. What did y'all think about that?
It was shocking. I was so shocked, and I loved it because it was just like the typical way that you do a cliffhanger with the villain is what we saw in the previous scene where he's pulled into somewhere God knows where, and it's like, all right, he's not dead. Like his death is not on screen, so he's still in play. And then bringing him back so quiet, and then I think it's only about 30 seconds. And then the freaking director's names. It was just so audacious.
Yeah, I mean, it was so good. And wasn't there like a little flashback that he had with baby Gamora?
Yeah, well, he did that initially happened when he first snapped.
Yeah.
When he first snapped, he went into the Soul Stone again, and you had Gamora saying like,
it hasn't been identified as a Soul Stone. We're just assuming or making.
Yeah, we're assuming.
He couldn't do it until he got the Soul Stone, and since he got the Soul Stone, he was doing it. And the Soul Stone is supposed to have his own centralized celestial body inside of it.
Also, we don't know because it's like we don't also know where these folks have gone. Maybe they're not dead. Maybe all of their souls are going to be inside of the Soul Stone.
Yeah,
and that's one of the possibilities that I want to ask you.
That's one of the thoughts I had.
Before we kind of get out of here, is Ant-Man wasn't in here. We talked about the next movie, Ant-Man and Wasp, was going to play a big deal and kind of like tying up some loose ends, but he was able to go down to the molecular structure into where they say it's almost another type of realm. It's almost very similar to the soul
subatomic level
realm, the subatomic level, and that's where he was able to go ahead and see where what's his name's wife was at, Hank Pym's wife. Scott Lang, I think, something's going to go on with him going back to that subatomic level, and maybe he's able to go inside and find the entrance to get into the Soul Stone.
And be able to get people out.
And maybe to get people out of there, or to get Adam Warlock into there and to take over the stone, I don't know.
What I thought was going to happen was Adam Warlock was going to maybe go on a quest to change it, because that's one version that's happened where he gets all the stones. He wishes everybody back to right before like the whole universe was taken over with small changes. Because one of the things they said they wanted to do is to keep Iron Man but not have Iron Man. And the actual comic books is now a young African American woman. So I'm thinking they can do that version of Ironheart. They can do that version of it where he snaps and everyone comes back, but some people are different. You know, instead of Iron Man, we got Ironheart. Instead of
Thor, we have the woman Thor.
Instead of we have Cho for the new Hulk. So they could change it where they can have this new, fresh take on the whole universe without actually making...
they would piss a lot of people off.
But it would work with the continuity of what they're trying to do. They said they want everything to be different.
I don't think Adam Warlock, though, will appear, because I was just thinking with the next couple of movies, if he was going to appear, it's going to be in Guardians 3, and that's not like scheduled till like 2020. So...
It's after, yeah.
No, it's way after.
But, I mean, that's what I would want. I mean, there's so many ways they can literally do this. That, like, another way that if they really wanted to do it, since it comes out after, you know, X-Men movies and stuff, they could do the Fantastic Four's child, Franklin Richard. He remade the universe several times. You could do Legion, because Legion's already technically out, and we see him in it. He's remade the universe. We have such a plethora of characters that can technically fix this if they want to combine more characters.
Omega level power.
A whole bunch of Omega level mutants. Yes. If they really even just bring the X-Men in alone, they have 5.
Yeah, I think the Reality Stone could do that.
You know,
do you guys think there's any chance that Thanos actually disintegrated too, and we actually were looking at an afterlife situation with him?
Nah.
No. Okay.
Nah. Because
it'd be cool if they did.
I don't think they want him to die yet.
Yeah. And to be honest, I even think at the end of Infinity War,
in there, right? Like it's a chest shot, so like we don't.
But did you see some of the damaged arm? You see like a little black right there up the top.
Oh, okay.
So you like that's how I was able to reconfirm it. Like his arm is still fucked. Like that's the one difference it seems is because like we talked about, the whole gauntlet was fucked up. The stones looked like they're fucked up, and his whole arm is fucked up.
Yeah.
From the reverb.
Using Dan Harmon's story structure that I love so much, I want to ask you all if Thanos is the protagonist, because he had more screen time than anybody else. So Dan Harmon's story structure goes, you need, go, search, find, take, return, change. So you usually find someone in a place of comfort. For Thanos, he started the movie off with murdering half of, a group of people at Asgard. So he's doing his 9 to 5. He was in a place that he was familiar with. The need, he wanted something. He wanted to go ahead and get the Affinity Gauntlet. He wanted the stones. The go, he went to an unfamiliar place, and he no longer was sending out his little minions to go ahead and do his bidding. Yeah. But he had to do, like he said, when he got I'll do it myself. Mm-hmm. He searched for it, and he got so close, so he adapted to being able to go ahead and actually do battle with people that he felt were beneath him. He found what he wanted. He got what he wanted. But then, right when he got what he wanted, he had to go ahead and pay a heavy price, losing Gamora. Mm-hmm. Then he returned back to the state of where he was at, with basically having all power and everybody being below him with the gauntlet. And then said, change. Having changed, with now his purpose is complete. Mm-hmm. So with that Dan Harmon story structure that he uses for all the episodes of Rick and Morty and for things like Community, you can also, check it out online. It's really cool. But with that being said, I would have to say that he is the protagonist, because this story structure comes from the hero's journey, which is one of the oldest forms of like writing for being able to go ahead. They used it for Star Wars. It's used for a lot of great stories. So what do you all think? Antagonist or protagonist?
I mean, I love kind of how you brought that up, because he's both, depending on your viewpoint, because he really, from his point of view, he's completely the protagonist. He's trying to do something to change the universe and make it a better place for everybody. But on the other side of, I always want to have this compared to this. When you kill an ant farm, you're not really too sad about the ants you kill, because you're like, some are left. And that's how he sees living creatures. y'all nothing but beneath me, but to help you beneath me people, I'm going to get rid of half of y'all. So we see that as negative because you're murdering us. So of course you've been antagonist because you're doing the evil side of what we don't like. So both.
This is basically, and this is why Thanos and Tony Stark have an understanding, is because it's basically the same dynamic that you have with Tony Stark versus Captain America.
Exactly.
The one versus the many. If sacrificing one is enough, that's worth it versus sacrificing a few to save the many.
Yep.
So it really depends on that side of the spectrum. If you think Thanos is the hero, then you should also think Tony Stark is the hero in Civil War.
Oh, great point. That's a really great point.
You can. And how do you
because
feel
it's
about
about the greater good. In essence, that's his viewpoint, his perspective.
Although I'll address because I would disagree with that a little bit.
I was going to say, I think there's a strong argument for him to be a protagonist because he actually does have a moral compass. Yeah. Like what sets him off on that is he found the idea of an overpopulated, desperate, oppressed, population to be amoral, which because it naturally leads to oppression, it naturally leads to squabbling over resources, violence, and he found that to be so horrible that he was gonna take horrendous measures to see it not happen on other planets, which is it's an extreme position. But they've been experimenting that with having the villain take an extreme but somehow sympathetic position. They just did it so recently successfully with Killmonger and Black Panther, but it lends so much pathos to the situation that I think you can argue, and you make a great narrative point with the story structure that you're just pointing out, that they have the pathos and they've done the story due diligence to set him up in an interpretation of protagonist. You can see it; it's there.
To piggyback off of that,
and he has the convictions of it. He sticks with it. He's consistent with it. He never wavers.
And that's one of the differences I would say between him and Stark, and also one of the differences between him and Killmonger. Killmonger wanted everything was solely based off vengeance, and he wanted to watch it all burn.
Yes.
While Thanos, he's a farmer. If you look at it. At times, you do have to go ahead and burn certain portions of your crops,
to burn crops
in order for it to properly regrow again. Killmonger, on the flip side, he burned with the intention to go ahead and throw salt into it and for things to never grow again. He wanted to burn it all down. On the flip side, too, when talking about Stark, while it does seem, and I see where you're going with the fact that it's he wanted to go ahead and save the many rather than the few, like Cap. But the difference is Stark's selfishness in deeming himself to go ahead and be an overlord of protection. He does everything under the guise of what a despot does, which is dangerous, is I'm trying to protect you. I'm doing this for your own good.
It's monomania. Cap and Thanos both have it.
Yeah, they're both for while I feel that Thanos really was doing everything for the greater good with what we talked about with the aforementioned speech about him talking about what goes on with a random lottery.
Yep.
The random lottery, anybody can be taken away. That
is actually a real Bernie Sanders-esque position.
Exactly.
If you must die, you must go randomly.
You must go randomly. So with that being said, I think that he was the protagonist, and it was shown with what he had to pay the price for, because many villains are not willing to go ahead and pay a price. They just want everyone else to pay that price.
Right. Loki, is it a parable about climate change? just make that point.
Well, climate change and overpopulation.
Hey.
So my question is, if we do label Thanos as the protagonist, who are we labeling as the antagonist?
Tony Stark.
Are we labeling the Avengers the antagonist? Are we labeling anything thwarting his overall goal?
The world as a whole is
the universe.
The universe itself is collapsing on itself. That is the antagonist. The antagonist is inevitability.
Yeah, it's not a man versus man. It's a man.
It's destruction.
Yeah.
Versus.
You're destroying everything you have because he says multiple times we live in a society that's limited,
and that makes the Avengers the antagonist because the Avengers, think about it. Why are the Wachovia Accords exist in the first place? Because as they said, when you create a group of super beings like that, naturally there has to be a villain. There has to be a challenge.
It's about
these
balance.
constant challenges have destroyed parts of Nigeria. It's destroyed Sokovia. It's left New York ravaged. All these things have happened as a result of the Avengers being created. So at a certain point, you know, they're a part of that world that's collapsing in on itself. So they technically are the antagonists.
Yeah, he's trying to restore balance, and they're fighting. Tipping of the scales.
Yeah, because it's always on the good guy's side. And then they're, you know, we are the good guys. I mean, they do a lot of property damage out here. You know, I've not once seen an Avengers cleanup day. You know, Tony Stark isn't in the iron suit, you know, with a little green smock on the side of the road picking up trash.
Got him in trouble in Civil War 2 different ways.
We've got to go ahead and get out of here because we were already gone way, way over time, but it was definitely needed for this episode. So once again, you can go ahead and hear any of my musings and storytellings on @CousinBenji at Instagram. Ready?
Hey, thank you for having me. It was an awesome experience, and I love talking to y'all once again.
Alanna?
Oh, thanks again for having me. If you want to see me on the social media, I'm Alanna Jane on Facebook, and I'm Alanna Twits on Twitter.
And I want to say thank you for the panel. Thank you for Benjamin and Nanawo for hosting this Avengers Infinity War. I guess we'll call it part 1 because we know there is going to be a second part released, I believe, next year, correct?
Yes.
So definitely come back for that. And thank you for listening to another Stay Woke podcast. You know our motto, live. And for this one, instead of listening to some great music, watch some great movies. And above all, love more. And we're out.